Can you all hear me okay? Awesome. I think this will be a good, quick transition into this next panel based on where we left off that previous panel, talking about how to talk about nuclear energy. Now we're going to look to the states and the mechanisms to bring those nuclear projects to fruition, and using all the messages in the different groups that we just discussed in the last panel, which was excellent. We'll do quick introductions, just who you are, where you're from, and then I'll go into questions, and we'll hopefully have a little bit of time before the break, which we're still going to try to keep on the schedule, to get you all to ask some questions as well. But first, I'm Renee Johnston. I am the campaign manager for Nuclear Matters, which is the grassroots coalition, over 600,000 individuals across the nation who have said, I'm here for nuclear. We work closely with the Nuclear Energy Institute to mobilize those individuals. If you're not a member, please do join. We do a lot of really great activations to support nuclear policies around the country. So happy to be your moderator today. We just want to go down and quickly introduce ourselves.
Okay. I'm Stephanie Barnard, House of Representatives for the 8th Legislative District in Washington State, and that serves this community right here, so you're all in my district right now.
I'm Danny Carroll, State Senator for the 2nd District in Kentucky, and that includes Paducah, where many of you all came last year. We appreciate all of you attending that event.
I'm Taylor Stevenson. I'm the CEO of Envoy Public Labs.
Hello, I'm Tracy Boatner. I am the President and CEO of the East Tennessee Economic Council in Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Hi, my name is April Wade. I'm the Executive Director for Virginia's Nuclear Energy Consortium.
So as you can see, we've got a lot of different states represented, from local, Kentucky, Minnesota, Tennessee, Virginia. Let's go through, if you could all just quickly characterize the state of current nuclear energy in your area, or in the future of nuclear in your area as well, and just kind of give a sense of where we're at right now.
All right, so the state of nuclear energy here is fantastic. We have the Columbia Generating Station, and we produce a lot of electricity for the state of Washington, and we are now expanding into other endeavors. Really, really excited to get an SMR here to provide even more power.
So we as a state, we just established the Nuclear Authority within the Commonwealth, and that's a body that we established at the University of Kentucky to help move the Commonwealth forward, a consistent, permanent body that will take care of that. And through the legislation, we set some direction for them, doing educational studies, workforce studies, educating the communities. We established a nuclear-ready community designation that this authority will be in charge of making those decisions for those communities. So as a state, we're trying to balance the all-the-above approach. We're trying to, as was mentioned earlier, make sure that we educate the people in our state, because there is some resistance. But the problem is we don't have time to do that, because we need to move now. And so that's the balance that we have in our Commonwealth. Locally in my district, in Paducah with our DOE site, we are already a nuclear-ready community. The county made that designation, so we are moving forward and trying to get in front and trying to be the leader within the Commonwealth in all these efforts. So that's kind of a general overview of where we are.
Renee, maybe, because I know Minnesota might not want me to speak for the state,
Sure.
But maybe I can answer a slightly different question, give kind of a trend line of what I've seen in, call it 7 years of working across the country. And I mean, ironically, starting in Minnesota with our pilot with GAIN and outreach back in 2018, 2019, we heard a lot of what are advanced reactors and why are you here talking to us? And really that started to change around 2000. The word started to get out. People were using SMR a lot. They thought that was pretty cool. And so it's been very exciting over the last couple of years to really see some of that excitement, that you maybe see on Facebook or talk about with your friends, that's now being talked about in state legislators. And you really saw that start in about 2021. And then you look at the legislation that's been introduced across the states and even passed in many states over the last 2-3 sessions. It looks like a hockey stick, to keep with my Minnesota nomenclature. So it's really exciting, and it's really the work that a lot of these elected officials are doing and digging into advanced reactors that's pushing that conversation forward.
So most of you probably know Tennessee just established last year a nuclear energy advisory council made up of about 22 industry leaders, and the governor also set aside initially a $50 million fund to incentivize growth in the nuclear industry in Tennessee. He recently added $10 million to that. So I believe it's a total of $60 million that Tennessee is investing in recruiting nuclear and expanding nuclear in our state. So we are very interested in supporting TVA's efforts to put small modular reactors on the Clinch River site in Oak Ridge, and we believe that that will be a huge economic driver for our state. Of course, we already have existing nuclear and have partnered with TVA for many years, but the state of nuclear in Tennessee is very good. And we are, in Oak Ridge especially, we are very familiar with nuclear. Nuclear is it's not a bad word. We've grown up in it because of the Manhattan Project and all of the work that's been done there, and Oak Ridge National Laboratory and Y-12 National Security Complex. So, so things are looking very bright in Tennessee.
Virginia also has a strong nuclear industry. We have defense with the shipyards. We have in Lynchburg, which has Framatome and BWXT, Dominion's North Anna and Surrey, and several companies in Northern Virginia. So we have a strong industry. Our universities are strong. The one thing we lack on the university side, though, is that we lost our research reactors back in the 80s. That is something we like to gain back to, have that circle finished. But, the founders of VNEC and VNECA were established by legislation in 2013. They saw that, yes, we have a strong foundation, but the industry needs some care. We need to take care of it, and we need to show that there's future opportunities. We, throughout the years, have done several things that have helped ensure that we are a state that has a strategic plan for the industry. We provide that to the state every 4 years. That's a big move for us. We've done some things to help advance energy workforce in Virginia. So our real thing right now is making sure when, industry is ready to move forward on a small modular reactor, advanced reactor, that we're there with them to help support them. And I think we're good. We still have a lot of work to do. The legislature, we lost 30% of the legislature, so this past session, we spent a lot of time educating new members, but we got 2 cost recovery bills for Utility 1 and 2, which is Dominion and APCO, which was historical, really, for us to be able to get that done. We've been able to pass several legislative bills over the years that just makes Virginia just stepping forward to where we need to be for deployment. We still have a lot of education to work in communities. Probably a lot of you all saw that, Southwest Virginia was a big focus. Well, that's not the part of the state that has nuclear, so we do have some work to do down there, but there's still a lot of opportunity. And I will shout out to Lynchburg and Hampton Roads, who are all here. Do they want to be a part of this conversation to learn more about what they can do from you all?
Great. It's a good overview of where we're at in the state of play with each of these different states, to be punny. You mentioned a little bit about this in different ways, but there's several different vehicles or methods to consider nuclear development, whether it's an advisory fund or a consortia or legislation, right? And you've all touched on it in different ways, but in the ways that your state has considered nuclear development, what do you see as the benefits or disadvantages of that method, whether it's a consortia or, again, legislation or advisory council or whatever it may be?
Well, I just gave you a very brief overview of the state at play, but our community has done a phenomenal job just from the ground up. So we started with a local organization called MCEI, the Mid-Columbia Energy Initiative, and that was started in 2010. And, you know, TRIDEC had been working on that, like Carl Dye mentioned earlier, for years and years. So we had a local organization that had been working on nuclear, and then, you know, that was built out in the community over the years to take a deep dive. You know how the prior panel was talking about how important it is to get the community involved. Well, we did that. We had the My Tri community initiative. We also, from that, found that one of our number one or two opportunities came in the nuclear industry. So, and that came from our local community. It was the grassroots effort, the effort that we took to find out what this community wanted as an energy strategy in our own community. And then, you know, from that came the Energy Council, and from that came Washington Vertical. So Washington Vertical was that connection that took our clean energy plan for our communities straight to that state level, and that is where, you know, we have really begun to make a difference as far as in the state. So our one of the things that has happened is that when I became a legislator, I thought, you know, we have this initiative in the Tri-Cities, and we really need to make some progress on it. We want an SMR. We've all agreed. The Tri-Cities is really, really energy savvy. You know, we know that energy density is really important rather than energy sprawl. And we understand that, you know, wind turbines and intermittent renewables are good things, but that it can take your view shed, and it can have an effect, or you know, when the wind's not blowing, and it really does only blow around here maybe 3 good months out of the year. So we know that nuclear is baseload. We know that nuclear is firm and dispatchable in our case. We've got the land available, we've got the transmission, we've got the workforce, and we're ready to plug and play. So how do you get that into the minds of legislators on the other side of the mountains that don't necessarily see that? And I apologize for taking a little too much time, but I went really fast on the first question.
Yeah, you did.
So one thing that I did was I thought, you know, we need to have a nuclear energy caucus. There's all these other caucuses out over in Olympia. And so I got there, to Olympia, and that's the first thing I did was start a bipartisan, bicameral nuclear energy caucus. And at first there was pushback immediately because in a welcome session for all the freshman legislators, I was sitting with a group of about 20 Republicans and Democrats, and we had to sit by someone across the aisle and say what our top priority was. And I said, an SMR. I would like to see a small modular reactor in the state of Washington. We've got the industry here. We can do this. And the person that I was sitting next to, he said, I have 3 words for you. 3 Mile Island. That's it. You know, no more conversation. It's over. But starting the Nuclear Energy Caucus really made a difference, and we can talk about that a little more later. But that's really what kind of got the ball rolling towards nuclear not being a dirty word.
Yeah.
So in Kentucky, we lifted the moratorium back in 2017, and as my predecessor, who was really responsible for that, and I always tell people, he did all the work, and I came in and got the bill passed and got all the credit for it. So, but we did name the bill in his honor, the LEAPR Act in 2017. Since then, we really didn't do a whole lot. 2 years ago, we started looking about what the next steps were going to be for the Commonwealth. We spent some time speaking with the folks in Virginia, Tennessee. We looked at the Idaho model on whether or not we wanted to set up a commission, how we wanted to structure that. And 2 sessions ago, we decided to back off of that a little bit, and we set up a nuclear working group within the Commonwealth. And in Kentucky, normally those things are done where the legislature will pick members, you will have experts come in, testify, and it's very much a formal process. I decided that's not what would be best for us to address this issue, and in the legislation that I did, we actually set up a working group within the executive branch, which is a novel idea that the executive branch and the legislative branch actually working together, especially when you have supermajority Republicans in the House and Senate and you have a Democrat governor, and it doesn't happen a whole lot. But one of the most satisfying and rewarding things that I've done in the 10 years I've been in the legislature was to establish that working group. Secretary Goodman with the Energy and Environment Cabinet, Kenya Stump, which many of you all know, who is the head of the energy group there, energy policy. I can't think of her title, I've lost that. But she actually led that group, and we brought in several experts within the industry. We brought in academia, we brought in environmental people, we brought in citizens, and it was a very productive process, and we did that through all last summer. Came out with an outstanding report that was very easy to read. It set forth where we are in the Commonwealth, what our barriers will be, what are the steps we need to take, and based on that report, we built legislation for this past session, and that was Senate Bill 198, and we were able to get that passed unanimously through both chambers, and unheard of in our Commonwealth. But there is one thing in the Commonwealth that we all agree on, and it's nuclear energy. There are different views on with renewables on to what level we need to have renewables, but we all agree that we need to take an all-of-the-above approach. And so that's what the bill did, was kind of prepare Kentucky for the next step. And we're trying to balance, Kentucky being very much a coal state, trying to balance the needs of the coal industry and the power needs. 2 winters ago, there were major rolling blackouts through the Commonwealth, and that got a lot of attention. And we understand that we've got some struggles with energy in our state. And so we also set up an energy commission with the last session to kind of make sure that we have an overall plan as we go forward, so we find the right balance as we move towards nuclear, which everyone agrees that we need to do that, and that in the future that will be the base load source of energy. But we don't want to move away from coal too quickly and then find ourselves in a deficit as the energy demands grow throughout the Commonwealth. So those are the things that we're kind of balancing, and we hope that the Nuclear Authority will help set the path for that, and they will be the expert body that will help to advise the Commonwealth, the board that's affiliated with that authority, and kind of set the tone and the direction and educate and all the things that you need to do and gather information. And while we're doing that, as we had initially planned to be a long-term plan to do this step by step, as I previously stated, there is a new sense of urgency on this with all the federal dollars that are available right now. We've got to take advantage of that. So we've got to look towards educating and developing and moving forward, but actually taking steps to get nuclear to our state. So that's what we're battling right now.
So first of all, I want to say I'm really impressed by what Kentucky did in such a short amount of time. I'm on the Tennessee's Governor's Nuclear Energy Council, and we've submitted an early report, but we still have another report. It's going to be over a year that we're taking, and so for you all to get together and pull together a report like that in such a short amount of time is impressive. So congratulations on that. I wanted to just talk a little bit about the Governor's Council and how it was set up and some of the things I think were good about how it's been set up and established. First thing is our council is led by the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. So the commissioner of TDEC is the chair of the council, and he and his team have existing relationships with the people in Oak Ridge because they're regulators for what happens in Oak Ridge. So you already, they're very knowledgeable about the environmental aspects of what's happening in Oak Ridge, and so I thought that it was very insightful that the governor put TDEC commissioner in charge of that committee. Then we have a representative from Economic and Community Development, and the governor established ECD as the owner of those $50 million funds that will be appropriated or that will be given as incentives for nuclear investment, and has also asked that they be a little bit more innovative and creative about companies that may want to come into Tennessee that may not have all of the regular economic background. They may not be hiring, 500 people. They may not have been established for as many years, but they've proven that they are reliable in the energy space, and so they're going to give the incentives to them maybe differently than they would a different type of company. And then the education and workforce aspect of this council has been very eye-opening. I think there are so many people and entities in Tennessee that want to help with meeting the workforce needs, but we think we need to prioritize education, K through 12, young people, getting young people and their parents educated on the benefits and the safety of nuclear is very important, and I think it will go a long way to recruiting folks to work in that industry. So those are just a few of the things I think Tennessee is doing well in this.
Well, Virginia, when they set up my organization, they set up another organization, the Virginia Nuclear Energy Consortium Authority, as well. That group is ran through the state's Department of Energy. The governor appoints board members to that. But the legislation created my organization. We're the working arm. So it's been a nice balance to have that group, those thought leaders together to talk about what's going on in the industry, but also have the organization ready to move and be able to act on things that are stated, that we agree that we have to make happen. So back in 2019, we had a summit. We listed, identified all these things that needed to happen for the industry to move forward, to be prepared for what's coming with small modular reactors. All those steps have helped us to have that partnership together. So I always think that is probably one of our best attributes, is having us as that working arm. But the other thing is that we are a partnership between industry and universities. Universities are part of our founders. They saw that there was a need to garner more research, and also for workforce. They knew that we needed to have something to come together to bring industry and universities together to work on these things. So not only do we want to advance nuclear in the state, the technology, but we also want to support the universities and what they have. So one of the things that we have been working on is, hopefully we'll announce soon, but we have created what's called the Virginia Innovative Nuclear Hub. And that's going to be an opportunity for industry and universities to come together to work on those research aspects that we think we need additional in Virginia. We have Jefferson Labs, but we don't have Oak Ridge. But we do have a lot of nuclear with defense and commercial and manufacturing in Virginia. So we want to advance that. The things that I think that we probably need to work on the most is, with the legislators especially, is making sure that they know that we're here as a resource for them at all times. I think we've done a good job with that, but like I said, we have a lot of new members, and our governor turns over every 4 years. We only have a one-term governor, so right now we have to look ahead at what the next administration is going to look like.
If I can quickly summarize and generalize, I think what you heard across the 4 responses is a pretty good evidence why some of the best advice I got early on in my career was, if you know energy policy in one state, you know energy policy in one state.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's to the point, if you're a state out there that is considering, like you're somewhere on the nuclear curious spectrum, right, and you're trying to figure out what are the best next step for me, first of all, you're not alone. And second of all, I think what I would distill out of all of these is that the best approach is going to be a very thoughtful approach where you index the capabilities of your own state, look at examples from other states, but ultimately do what's in the best interest of your community and your state. I think that's kind of a through line that I can draw through all of these.
Yeah.
And if I can further draw a through line to some of the earlier comments from today, I think what we're seeing develop is that local to state to federal continuity, and that's where a lot of nuclear projects and nuclear conversations are moving forward. If you're looking at feasibility studies as sort of a logical next step, one thing I would strongly encourage you to do is read the feasibility studies that have already been published by a number of states. I can confidently point to the GAIN program as a good resource to find all of those feasibility studies in one spot. Similarly, if you're looking at a working group, you have some great resources to look at and kind of look at how to hone that for your state. But ultimately, what a lot of these entities are doing in these states is starting to position the state to answer a question that I started to hear a lot last year, which is, what are the next steps? And a lot of those next steps, I'm not going to go through the litany of them, have been talked about here. But again, it's one thing to talk about them. It's another thing to have your state resources oriented and connected with your local communities so that you can be making concerted decisions.
Excellent.
I just want to add one thing
Yeah.
to that, because I think you made a good point, is that, Tracy and I just actually got to know each other over the last year, and I'm so grateful for that, because it's nice to have someone to reach out to ask advice, because you don't have to recreate the wheel. A lot of us have done a lot of these things, and we can point you to the right direction to where you need to go. So please reach out. I know Senator Carroll, he and I talked early on about his legislation and what we're doing in Virginia, but I want to be a resource to everybody as well. And honestly, if anybody has anything to help Virginia, let me know, because I don't want to recreate the wheel either.
Please.
Yeah. One thing that was brought up that I thought was really poignant was that you do have to take the temperature of your own state and decide what structure would fit best for the situation that you're in. And that's one of the things that we discussed as a caucus was, do we want to have, a membership, or does this need to be formal, or what type of structure should this be? And really, if you're just trying to educate, especially in the state of Washington, where you have to make the line of demarcation very, very clear between Hanford, the nuclear reservation and the waste cleanup project there, and the Columbia Generating Station, where it's a completely different entity, and there's a big difference between nuclear waste and that legacy waste and the spent fuel from Columbia Generating. So it's and even when setting up the caucus, we thought, let's just have people self-identify. And I've had a lot of people say to me, who are the legislators that are on the Nuclear Energy Caucus? I said, no, we have chairs. What we do is we set up meetings and presentations. Our first presentation was with X-Energy. So Cam Gafarian and Clay Sell came out, and that was set up through Energy Northwest. They helped us with that, and so did Labor, our local 598. And it was phenomenal. It was like everybody there was very receptive. There wasn't a great turnout, but there was enough. And the people there were, really, Cam brought some of that triso fuel. So to hand that around, it was like show and tell. It was, everybody had so much fun, and we were all learning and asking questions, open dialogue, but nobody felt pressure to sign their name to something. Like that would be a real risk to a lot of people that would disincentivize them from wanting to participate. So we just left it completely open. And, our second session, we had who'd we have? We had Mark Nickel with NEI came out, and that was incredible. He knows everything about nuclear, and everybody had a ton of questions. And we had TerraPower come out for another presentation, and our last one of the session was Carol Browner, who administrator for the EPA, and or the energy czar for Barack Obama is a better way of putting that. And you know, when we told everyone that's who was coming, there was just everyone was so excited. We had 42 legislators attend that session. And then during the summer, during the interim, we planned 2 tours so that those, and they weren't marketed highly to the Republicans. And there was strategy in that, knowing that a lot of the times, this is just a learning tour. There has to be a certain level of comfort, and you don't want to be taught to, or you don't want to be lectured at, but just a real open opportunity to learn. And so we had a Puget Sound tour for nuclear energy over on the other side of the mountains, and then we had one in Richland. And you know, it made all the difference. You know, it's when the chair of the Capital Budget Committee, it comes to your tour and sees that and starts getting excited and talking to you about nuclear energy for the first time. That's a huge step in the right direction. So you just have to be nimble and flexible and willing to take it in the natural direction of what you feel is best for your state.
Yeah.
Kara told me to jump in with a question, so I'm going to ask a question. I'm Eric Knox from Momentum. This is a great panel. Really appreciate it. Senator Carroll, good on Kentucky for lifting their moratorium on nuclear. That leaves, that's 38 down, 12 more states to go. Representative Barnard, really appreciated your presentation, your comments. As someone who's been around the world and spoke on nuclear issues for more than 3 decades, I love it when people bring up things like 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, thinking it's going to be a conversation stopper. 3 Mile Island was my type of disaster. Growing up in South Carolina, we know disasters when hurricanes and tornadoes come through. People usually die. No one died at 3 Mile Island. Give me that type of disaster every day. And by the way, they continued making nuclear power and electricity at 3 Mile Island until just a couple of years ago when they decommissioned the plant after its useful life. Virginia. I'm a resident of Virginia. I pay a lot of taxes in Virginia, okay? Congress just passed a ban on Russian nuclear uranium. The largest unmined uranium deposit in Virginia is at Coles Hill, about an hour and a half away from where BWXT makes fuel for nuclear aircraft carriers and submarines. And you mentioned Framatome, so I won't mention them again. What do we have to do to get Governor Youngkin to move to lift the ban on uranium mining in Virginia? We could become a net exporter of uranium, not just around the U.S., but around the world.
So, Kara, you went for a light question, huh? Thanks. Well, real quick, I will give a little bit of background about me, so just clarify this when I do answer your question. I'm originally from New Mexico. I was on the original team that got the license for the Uranco facility, for the uranium facility outside of Eunice, New Mexico. I worked in the uranium mining industry in northern New Mexico. My uncle worked and mined up there. My mom's family is from Gallup, New Mexico, and I've lived on the Navajo reservation. So all that, know that. So, but in Virginia, Virginia has a moratorium. Governor Youngkin has 1 legislative session left. And as for VNEC, it is not, we respect that the state has a moratorium. And I probably not the answer you want to look for, but they have that moratorium and we respect that. You know, right now, our biggest focus is how we can advance deployment and advance research. And I think that, although in my background, as you can say, I am supportive of the industry, but for Virginia, we have to respect that moratorium. Who knows what 10 years is going to look like, and I may answer it different then. Although I don't know if I'll be here in 10 years, and but hopefully I'm not having to have that same answer in the future.
Okay. Other questions from the audience here? Yes, please.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Frank New. I'm a county judge, Rockwall County, Texas. I'm also a member of the Texas Advanced Nuclear Reactor Working Group. Thank you. My question is, so we've all of your respective states have allocated money. What are your partners telling you they need the money for? Is it upfront construction cost? Is it rate subsidies? Is it rate floors? What are they needing the money for?
The first thing that, with the utilities that we've talked to, is the early site permitting process, and I think that cost about $75 million. And I know there was an effort in Kentucky this legislative session. Actually, the Senate president, that's what he wanted to do, was to allocate $75 million, set it aside for that purpose. And what we ended up doing, and there were several provisions in the bill on where I thought we should spend money based on what the working group decided, but I'm a senator, he's the president. And so there were some changes made within leadership when we went through the budget, and we actually set aside $40 million, and it went to UK in kind of a quasi-trust, and those funds will be used to fund the operation of the authority and the Energy Commission. And I'm hoping next session there will be some changes made, but our thought was that we would put funding towards educating the state, doing site studies, site identification studies, labor needs, educational needs, and set aside about $40 million for economic development, strictly for nuclear projects. And understand, in Kentucky, when we say nuclear energy, we're not just focusing on reactors. We're focusing on developing a nuclear ecosystem within the Commonwealth, and that's all facets of nuclear, and we're very careful about marketing it that way. So, you know, if you're in a related industry and you're looking for a state that's wanting all to do with nuclear, Kentucky's it. In Paducah, you know, we have a long history with the gaseous diffusion plant. We have uranium hexafluoride there that Bill Gates says there's enough fuel for nuclear reactors in Paducah today to power this country for hundreds of years. And we're working with GLE, laser enrichment, to come in to enrich that material that we have on site that has been looked at as waste for many years. So, and in Paducah, we're also doing a reindustrialization study. The local government's got a grant for that. So we're focusing on the entire ecosystem in Kentucky, but financially, you know, from the utilities, that's the one thing that they asked for, was to help with that early site permitting process, and regulatory, to be able to allow multiple utilities to come together to build a reactor jointly, and that's kind of a structure that really is not utilized. And so as part of what we did, we directed the Public Service Commission, the regulatory entity, to prepare for all these contingencies as we move forward. We want them to be ready when if we have 2 or 3 utilities that come together, they want to build a reactor, when they walk in the Public Service Commission with their application, we want them to be ready to go, to have the staff trained and not spend a year figuring out what to do and how to proceed with this. And that's kind of been our goal, and that's where I had hoped we'd invest the money, and that may still happen in sessions to come, but you know, that's been the big ask on our part, was early site permitting.
Okay.
Just +1, what the good senator said, but a feasibility study, but the other issues are just that, again, that ecosystem, that industry, building out of the industry. We have a huge opportunity here, and we need to take advantage of that. We have the money, the Inflation Reduction, we have the CHIPS Act, we have Infrastructure Act, we have a lot of funding out there, and it's low-hanging fruit, and we need to take advantage of that to provide that for our nuclear industry and to grow that ecosystem. So there were 5 bills introduced this session for nuclear, or nuclear-related bills, which, you know, really, just to get the word out, just to kind of socialize the idea of how are we going to continue to pay. I know we got a $25 million proviso, which I know there's a panel after this to talk about, so I won't go into that at all, but the other bills were to provide, incentives and tax exemptions for nuclear industries, such as Framatome and nuclear fuel assemblies, we also want to provide some kind of ideas or structure potentially for the state to continue funding nuclear advancements. So a grant program that was introduced, or a small modular reactor loan program that was also introduced and received a hearing. So really wanted to take advantage of the momentum of the tours that the Nuclear Energy Caucus had in the summer, and those members or those participating in those tours that had said, yeah, I'm all in for nuclear. And we really wanted to take advantage of that moment and introduce some legislation that would begin to start those conversations. So we knew what our top priority was in Washington State, and that was that proviso. But we also are looking to the future and saying, all right, we need to get some ideas out there so that we can begin to have these conversations about what might be the best fit for the coming years.
Yeah. Were there any other thoughts from the panel on that?
I would just say that I think what you're seeing across the states is there are shots on goal being taken to lower hurdles and barriers for entry to commercial deployment, and particularly that's in the early deployment space, right? I don't think that I'm stating anything other than the obvious there. I mean, we all understand that a lot of these technologies are at first of a kind, and that to get to nth of a kind, that's really the goal of the industry here over the next 10 years. And so where states are coming into support is kind of on the front end with feasibility studies, right? Starting to scratch that surface. That seems to be a fairly low-hanging fruit option to put a little bit of state dollars into. It's also why I'll underscore again, if you're thinking about a feasibility study, don't do a Me Too feasibility study. Actually add something substantive to the conversation. But to that point, I mean, you've heard early site permits, subsidies on PPAs. I know Mike Squires talked about cost overrun insurance. These are all policy tools that are being talked around. And again, it comes back to how are you spending your dollars in your state to most effectively lower those hurdles and those barriers for entry into the market.
And I mentioned the cost recovery bills that passed during this last legislation earlier. That was led by the industry. My organization supported that, but that was led. It was very important to them to get that passed to move forward. We didn't have any workforce legislation this year. No. We've passed some workforce legislation as well.
I think we're going to wrap, actually. We're done, yeah. Okay, great. I think that's all we have time for. I know everyone's itching to stretch their legs and move on, but thank you to all our panelists, and thank you to ECA. This was great. Thanks.
Just a reminder again that if these folks we are grateful that they're staying around, so by all means, please find them during the breaks. I am going to kill your break a little bit. I apologize. So if you guys can come back in about 10 minutes, we'll get restarted and we'll try and get ourselves back on schedule.